And everything's good. We're on YouTube.
Okay, good. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of Bellbrook City Council, Monday, January the 11th, 2021. Can you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Okay, thank you. Pam, could you call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Havens?
Here.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen?
Here, ma'am.
Mr. Greenwood?
Here.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Here.
Mr. Edwards?
Here.
Mayor Schwaller?
Here. Thank you, Pam. We have a motion to excuse Councilman Hoke from this evening's meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second, Mayor.
Thank you.
A motion was made by Mr. Havens to excuse Mr. Hoke from the January 11th City Council meeting, and this was seconded by Dr. Van Veldhuizen. Mr. Havens?
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
And Mayor Schwaller?
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Before you in the packet, you should have the minutes of our last meeting, which was December the 14th, 2020. Does anyone have any corrections or changes to those minutes?
None, Mayor.
None, Mayor. None, Mayor.
Seeing none, I declare those minutes approved as submitted. Under the mayor's announcements and special guests tonight, we do have two special guests with us. The first one being our service director, Ryan Paisley. For those of you who got a bill in January with regards to the City of Bellbrook water bill and trash collection, you had received a notice in that bill from the EPA as well as a letter from Ryan describing a testing which occurred back in 2020. And with that, I wanted to let Ryan speak a little bit about it. So number one, we understand the background, and number two, anyone in the viewing audience can feel very comfortable in reaching out to Ryan with any further questions. With that, Ryan, I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So back in June, we collected some water samples that we were not supposed to start collecting until the beginning of July. So we got a notice in October stating that those samples would not be counted for us for our monitoring requirements. So long story short, they wanted us to notify the public. They wanted us to resample, which I took samples in on November 30th. And just to be clear, the samples I took in June and the samples I took in November, everything was well under limits. There's just to reiterate, there is nothing wrong with our drinking water. So the next 2 months, January, February, and March, all of those water bills will get these notices. When you read the drinking water notice, that is a template from the EPA. All I do is put in dates and phone numbers and stuff like that. It's really hard to. You could kind of take it as there's more wrong than what there really is. Where I just sampled 12 days too early. It's quite simple. Everything's fine. The results are back, and everything, like I said, is perfectly safe.
Thanks, Ryan. I just want to make sure the public understood that our water is in fact safe, and we do test it as required. We just tested a little bit early this time, but all the test results have been very favorable, positive, without any problems. It was just a timing issue that we took the test a few days too early.
Any responses from anybody?
I did get one person that asked for the results for the November 30th, and I just forwarded those results to him. And quite honestly, if you look at the results, there's so many chemicals they test for that it's crazy to even understand. But I sent it to her and I never got a response back.
And keep in mind, Nick, we've only got bills out to about 1/3 of the citizens at this
Okay.
point. So we have more coming. Any other questions on council? Ryan, thank you so much for reassuring us that the water supply is in fact good. Appreciate you being with here this evening. Thank you much.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is the swearing in of our new fire chief, Anthony Bazzaro. This is a real pleasure to swear him in this evening. This guy is someone who's been with the Bellbrook Department since 1995, so it's nice to bring in to the chief role someone who's been with Bellbrook for a long time and has had their whole career with us. So with that, I'm going to go to the other room for the swearing ceremony, and I'll let the city manager provide a little background about our new fire chief.
So just to give everybody a little bit of information about the process that we went through when we were looking for our next fire chief, we did open that up and we put that out to external candidates that were interested. And we did receive a number of applications and interviewed a number of different applicants that were interested. We had a very broad pool of very qualified individuals. However, Anthony Bazzaro, who has been with our Bellbrook Fire Department for a very long time, which I'm going to go into detail about, absolutely rose to the top and was selected as our next fire chief. So Anthony is going to be our third full-time fire chief, and we are very excited for him to have grown up through the ranks with the city of Bellbrook and now take the lead position over the department as the chief. So just to give everybody a little bit of background about Anthony, he began with the Bellbrook Fire Department as a cadet in 1988. And when he turned 18 years of age, he was able to become a volunteer firefighter EMT in 1995. So he was one of the first not one of the first volunteers. He was a volunteer firefighter EMT in 1995. And then in 1999, he became part of the first group of part-time firefighters for the department. He then was able to transition to full-time in 2006, where he worked his way up through the ranks before his last promotion as deputy chief that was in 2018. He has also served as a member of the Ohio Task Force 1 as a technical search specialist from 2000 to 2012. And he was also an assistant fire instructor at Sinclair Community College from 2010 to 2016. And Anthony completed his associates in fire science technology in 2015 and his bachelor of science in fire administration as well. So with that being said, I will turn that over to the mayor to administer the oath.
Thank you, Melissa. Anthony, if you could raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, Anthony Bazzaro, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the state of Ohio, and the charter and ordinances of the city of Bellbrook. I further declare that I will serve the citizens of Bellbrook by protecting life and property, and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties of fire department chief for which I'm about to enter. Congratulations,
Thank you,
Chief.
sir.
You get it all?
Yeah, we'll get a quick picture
Okay.
and then Michelle's going to pin his badge on.
Now Michelle gets the pleasure of pinning the badge.
This is always the tricky part.
Looking good, looking sharp.
Thank you.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Here's the oath. If I could have you ask you to sign it.
Sure.
And then Chief has a few comments for the citizens. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. To the mayor, city manager, and the rest of council, I just wanted to say thank you for the awesome opportunity to be able to serve as fire chief for the city of Bellbrook. This is a great community and an awesome fire department. We got some of the best guys working for the department, guys and gals working for the department, and I couldn't be prouder to be the leader of this group. I look forward to the opportunities with council and appreciate their support, and just look forward to the future of the fire department. It's a great place and I can't wait. So thank you to everybody for all the support and guidance throughout the years. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Does anybody in council have any words of congratulations to Anthony at this time?
I'd just like to thank Anthony for his dedication to the city and congratulate him on your promotion. It's well deserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely echo those sentiments. Welcome, Anthony.
Ma'am. Thank you.
Congratulations, Anthony. The process that brought you to the chief slot proved that you're the man. You
I
had
appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
with the competition and everything, and so congratulations, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
Given this meeting's on Zoom and not in person, let's all give Anthony a big round of applause. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for being here tonight. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We have no public hearings this evening, but we do have two introductions of ordinances. The first being ordinance 2021-1. Councilwoman Middlestetter, please.
You're muted, Elaine.
Muted.
Technology. Okay, here we go again. City of Bellbrook Ordinance number 2021-1. An ordinance amending zoning code section 20.08, proceedings of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the Bellbrook Zoning Code. Whereas the City of Bellbrook has adopted chapter 20.08, proceedings of the Board of Zoning Appeals into the zoning ordinances for the City of Bellbrook. And whereas chapter 20.08 outlines the procedure for administering the oath of witnesses by a notary public. And whereas the City of Bellbrook desires to amend the zoning ordinance to eliminate the requirement that the oath be administered by a notary public. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains section 1 that the following amendment to section 20.08, procedures of the Board of the Zoning Appeals of the City of Bellbrook Zoning Code, be approved with deletions shown by brackets and strike through, and additions shown by italics and underlined. The board shall adopt rules necessary to the conduct of its affairs in keeping with the provisions of this ordinance. Meetings shall be held at the call of the chairman and at such other times as the board may determine. The chairman, or in his absence, the acting chairman, may compel the attendance of witnesses. Oral testimony given as evidence must be given under oath. Oaths will be administered by the board chair or designee. All meetings shall be open to the public. The board shall keep minutes of its proceedings showing the vote of each appeal considered by the board and the section of this ordinance where applicable, which the board has considered in approving or disapproving any petition or other matter brought before the board, and shall keep records of its examinations and other official actions, all of which shall be a public record and be ultimately filed in the office of the board. The official copy of the minutes of all proceedings will be signed by the board chairman and secretary. Section 2. It is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the adoption of this ordinance were adopted in an open meeting of this council, and that any and all deliberations of this council that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including but not limited to section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3. This ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Elaine. Anything to add, Melissa, to this?
So this was actually something that Pam had come across in the various updates to the code that we had been doing. So this was something that was discussed with our municipal attorney, and we also researched as well. So I don't know if Pam wants to offer some comments to that, but this just seems like a really easy change to make, because it has not been something that had been done in the past, in the recent past at least. So we thought that the board chair designee would make more sense than just a notary public.
Yeah, so I did a little research on the requirements for taking oaths, and the Ohio Revised Code does not call for such a thing. They allow each municipality to make their own board rules, but there's no call for a notary. I checked with Beaver Creek, Xenia, and Sugar Creek Township, and all of those give that responsibility to the chair or the vice chair or designee. So those were the ones I found. A lot of the cities don't even say anything about the taking of the oath and designate anyone in particular for doing it. So that was the information I found.
Okay, thanks a lot, Pam. Does anybody in council have any questions regarding ordinance 2021-1?
Yeah, I do. How do we, so the board, the BZA board is a semi-judicial board, correct?
Yes,
So this is like essentially swearing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth when you go before the BZA. Everyone's sworn in. Doesn't there have to be some sort of notary public doing that? On a judicial board, like maybe the judge, or I don't know, it just doesn't seem like we can just willy-nilly let anybody do that in a judicial format.
the chairman of the board is usually the person that takes an oath on any of the other boards when they swear in.
On what other board are you referring to?
Well, like anybody that comes before like the planning board or those types of boards, if somebody comes in, I don't know that they have to swear an oath.
I'm with you, but the BZA, they have to swear an oath.
Oral witnesses do, yes.
But the Ohio Revised Code says we don't have to have a notary do it, so that's pretty much where we get our guidance from.
Right, so if the Ohio Revised Code doesn't require it, why should we?
But to be clear, it's not just any board, it's a semi-judicial board. I just want to make sure the Ohio Revised Code was clear on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we
I
got-
did. I researched the Ohio Revised Code for their Board of Zoning Appeals in hearing testimony from people. And it says that municipalities, townships, I didn't really look at the county information, but it said nothing about requiring a notary. Usually, it just says that those townships and municipalities set up their own board rules. That's what I found.
Did you run this by the attorney at all? And he didn't have any issue with it?
No, he thought it was fine to do. He's also the attorney for Beaver Creek and Miami and a whole bunch of places. And so he said it's customary to have it be the chair or the vice chair of a board.
As long as they understood when they were answering the question that this wasn't like a planning board or a PRB, that it was a semi-judicial board, I'm cool with it.
Any more discussion? That be the case, could I have a motion for the introduction of ordinance 2021-1?
I so move.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Motion was made by Mrs. Middlestetter to introduce ordinance 2021-1, amending zoning code section 20.08, proceedings of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the Bellbrook zoning code. This was seconded by Mr. Edwards. Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
yes,
Mayor Schwaller.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Next up is ordinance 2021-2. Councilman Van Veldhuizen.
All righty, sir. Ordinance number 2021-2, an ordinance repealing old chapter 1244, zoning permits and certificates of the Bellbrook Municipal Code, and enacting a new chapter 1244, zoning permits and certificates of the Bellbrook Municipal Code. Whereas the Bellbrook Municipal Code includes chapter 1244, zoning permits and certificates, which establishes the fees for zoning permits and certificates issued in the city of Bellbrook. And whereas city staff recommends that the old chapter 1244, zoning permits and certificates, be repealed, and that a new chapter 1244, zoning permits and certificates, be enacted, so the schedule of fees contained therein can be updated. And whereas city staff believes that an increase in the fees collected by the city for the issuance of zoning permits and certificates is in the best interests of the city. And whereas the planning board met on December 17th, 2020, and reviewed the proposed revised fee schedule for permits and certificates issued by the city of Bellbrook pursuant to chapter 1244, and the planning board recommends that city council approve the same. Now therefore, the city of Bellbrook hereby ordains. Section 1. The old chapter 1244, zoning permits and certificates of the Bellbrook Municipal Code is hereby repealed. Section 2. A new chapter 1244, zoning permits and certificates of the Bellbrook Municipal Code is hereby enacted as set forth in Exhibit A, which is attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference, with deletions shown by strike-through and additions by italics and underlined. Section 3. It is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the adoption of this ordinance were adopted in an open meeting of this council, and that any and all deliberations of this council that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public, in compliance with all legal requirements, including, but not limited to section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 4, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. So ends the reading of the ordinance, sir.
Thank you very much. Melissa, can you take us through Exhibit A a little bit and just kind of talk about the increases?
Yes, so the way that the increases were reviewed and evaluated was that our planning and zoning assistant had cross-referenced our prices with area municipalities, and I had actually sent just a few hours ago that table to all of council, and I will include that in the next packet. So it showed where our old fees were, and then it also showed those same fees for a lot of the area municipalities, and then gave a recommendation of where we should be to be more in line. So I believe the last update to our fees, it was just to temporary signs back in 2017. I could not personally find where a complete overhaul and comparison such as this was done. So we thought that it was important to do that to make sure that our rates are accurate, because a lot of these processes are very time consuming and require boards and hearings to happen, which take a significant amount of preparation. So we wanted to make sure that we were trying to capture a reasonable amount of that money back for time spent on some of these things. So I will include the fee schedule comparison to the next packet to the ordinance for the public hearing.
Melissa, how much do we collect in fees every year? Do you have any idea?
Not off the top of my head. And my budget book is not within.
It's okay. I just was wondering if you knew. It's not critical.
I can, actually, it's always in our quarterly, I think it's always in the quarterly financials. No, wait, that's just tap-in fees. So I will have that for the next meeting. I can do that.
I mean, I think our fees should be competitive. I'm just wondering on the timing. Can we approve this at our next meeting or whenever it is and make it go into effect later on this year? I mean, I know it's not a lot of money, but you know, every dollar helps, I think, our citizens. I just don't want to feel as if someone has got the wherewithal and the financial ability to put in a pool, I just feel like they should put in a pool since no one can go anywhere and not have a fee. But I don't know what anyone else thinks.
Would you be agreeable to having these fees effective July 1st or something like that? Or
Yeah, I was thinking like 6 months or something, just till we can get everyone out of their house and do things again.
that makes sense, especially if anybody's got a project that's kind of getting ready to start or something like that, so they can pay the higher fee after they've been sort of duly notified about it.
I mean, there's not a whole lot the city can do about stuff, but we can certainly save a few dollars here and there in fees unless I asked about how much we collect, unless it was some huge budgetary number, but I can't imagine it is. So, you know, if it's several $1,000s, you know, it's not going to kill us to delay it. Just my opinion.
I have another reason I'd like to see this delayed. And I kind of request city staff to look into the difference between Article 14, Article 18. The zoning fees for the variance does not take into consideration the old village district. The old village district is designated by ordinance and places an extra burden on property owners with respect to zoning. Setback requirements in section 18 of the zoning code are used for the old village as well. The old village lots were small and the buildings on the lots were placed as close as possible to the street or lot line in order to save space. Using section 18 for a shed, for an example, uses an 8-foot setback from the lot line. In the old village, that places the shed in the middle of the yard. If the property owner wants to set the shed closer to the line, then the variance is required. As you can see in the schedule, that requires $200 fee. My point is, section 14 needs to be written so it is designed to fit the old village to avoid variances. Guidelines in section 14 covers setbacks and basically says setbacks should be close to the original placement of the buildings. If the code is to be rewritten, it should be written so there are no conflicts. I don't have a problem with the fee, only the problem with the driver of the variances in the old village. And I just request that our staff look into that if we are going to, wait a few months before it goes into effect.
Worst, do you think if we waive the variance fee for the old village area, but still ask them to go through the process to make sure nothing silly happens, would that kind of meet your concern?
Well, the request for a variance is probably going to be there. The only thing I'm looking at is section 18, which deals with properties built 50s, 60s, 70s and on up. Bigger yards, setback requirements were designed into the zoning. And the old village plotted in 1844, a lot of it. Like I said, buildings on the lot lines, on the streets. They had a lot of outbuildings, including the toilet and everything else. And to have any yard, you had to do that. So there still exists a lot of buildings built that way. And if I just for something that is kind of covered in Article 14, this guideline says keep the buildings in line with, you know, the existing buildings. Like like your house is on the close to the street, or the buildings, maybe some of the old ones are still existing close to the lot line. And then you have to deal with trying to do that and pay $200 to do that when it's already written as a guideline not to. I'm just saying that when Melissa says that the staff's going to rewrite Article 14 and a lot of zoning changes coming up, that if we're going to try to keep the old village kind of the way it was, or try to keep its unique setting as stated in the old village ordinance, we need to kind of change a few things to avoid or change things to try to keep it that way, other than kind of using section 18 and then somebody has to argue their point and pay money at the same time. It's a conflict.
Yeah, village should have its own zoning rules.
Right,
Not-
I mean,
Not based on suburban lot lines, because the old village is not a suburban lot in any way, shape, or form.
right. That was my point. I don't have a problem with, you know, somebody requesting a variance and paying fees. It's just, I don't think they should have to do that if it's something that's already kind of marked out. And, you know, we're trying to preserve that. So that was my only argument, was let's make it right, basically.
I had a question come in from someone who read the ordinance. I think there was something about a penalty if they started construction before a fee was, or before a permit was requested. They wanted to know if it would be retroactive, and I said I didn't think so, but I'll ask the question anyway.
I think I read that today. If you don't get a permit and you get it retroactively, 50% more charge, I think. Is that right, Melissa?
Yes.
But it's not going to be applied to permits that were already issued.
No. And I did talk to Forrest earlier about this, and he does bring up a good point that our zoning code is kind of a one size fits all in terms of some of these accessory structures and additions and things like that. We have regulations for those things, but there are not separate regulations for the old village. And that may apply to 80% of the city, but that 20% would always need to have a variance. And I think that as we are going through and we are rewriting sections of the code, we need to be cognizant of that. So I know that accessory structures is something that we need to look at and is going to be one of the sections that's going to be changed this year. And when we do that, we need to be very cognizant of what does that look like for 80% of the community and what does that look like for the old village, because you don't want to set up the old village where they're always going to have a variance because they don't conform to that. So it is something that we need to look at. But Forrest does make a very good point about that.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Is that the case, Melissa? Do a lot of the people that live in the old village, are they subject to more fees than somewhere who doesn't live in?
Well, so I had asked Jessica, out of the variances that were heard in the last year, the only variances in the old village were related to signs in the downtown where
Okay.
they're supposed to be 10 feet off the ground, and they were putting, some of them were put at 9 feet off the ground, which is actually more common. So there weren't any variances that were heard last year from the old village other than the signs in the commercial, like right downtown. So that was it. So
Okay.
now I have not went back past that because Forrest and I just had this conversation at like 3 o'clock today. So I have not went back to historically look at variances in the old village, but I could certainly do that if it's something that council's interested in.
I think based on what Forrest said and about what you said about having to rewrite some of the zoning code, it probably does make sense to delay this until July till we can maybe get better handle on it. So I don't want to punish people because of where they live and have them subject to a bunch of fees that maybe I wouldn't because I live in a newer neighborhood.
I don't know that it's necessary to go back and see how many variances were issued.
No,
There's no reason to just fix it so that they're not going to be subject to asking for variances.
right.
And as we go forward.
Well, there should be variances in place, but maybe different ones for that area is what you're
Well,
saying.
there's not a lot of room to make variances in there are very few lots downtown that have any size whatsoever. They're all pretty tiny lots and everything's pretty squished together. There are a few exceptions.
We can't just let them have a free for all though. I mean, they've got to have parameters, right?
I think so.
Well, yeah, that's,
A drive through downtown might make you think about parameters.
I walk through downtown a lot, so I know what you're talking about.
Okay, logistically, any more discussion on ordinance 2021-2? Melissa, is it as simple as just changing the effective date in section 4?
Yes, that's what I was gonna recommend.
Okay,
It could read, take effect and be enforced from July 1st, 2021.
That's good.
And that would also give staff some time to, I mean, you have to think when we look at zoning code to rewrite, we have to identify it, rewrite it, and then send it to planning board. So everything isn't necessarily accomplished quickly because they only meet once a month, but we can certainly try to identify and get things written. So.
okay. Any more comments or discussion?
I do appreciate, Melissa, you and staff working on this. Done a lot of hard work on it.
Does it make sense to include the VRB and the planning board in a working meeting as you do that?
So VRB Article 14 is the only thing that VRB is governed by, or not necessarily governed by, but that's the only article of the zoning code that they regulate, I guess. So the planning board is obviously involved. The BZA, we could bring them into that too. It just, not to say that that is a bad idea for any reason, but that would delay because everybody's going to come at it from a different perspective. So if we had two boards look at it and then council, it could take a while. That's the only thing with that, but I'm not opposed to it. If it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we have to. I was just asking the question if it made sense.
I know the property maintenance code we're overhauling, and we are going to have BZA/PRC look at that, since that is section of code that they enforce and work with. So that's one that makes sense, and that's one that we're certainly going to do to include them on that.
but they're also the ones that hear the variance requests, are they not?
Yes.
So it makes sense to me that they'd be involved in the review of the ordinance.
For the fees, Elaine?
Oh, no, the writing of the ordinance, not the fees.
Yes, yes.
It's the money people that look at the fees.
Okay, any more discussion on ordinance 2021-2? We have a motion for the ordinance as amended.
Right, as amended, Mayor, with the date of 1 July, I'll make the motion.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
All right, a motion was made by Dr. Van Veldhuizen to introduce ordinance 2021-2, repealing old chapter 1244, zoning permits and certificates of the Bellbrook Municipal Code, and enacting new chapter 1244, zoning permits and certificates of the Bellbrook Municipal Code with the how am I saying this? With the change to the effective date to July 1st of 2021. This was seconded by Mr. Edwards. Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
yes,
Mrs. Middlestetter,
yes,
Mayor Schwaller.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Moving on, we do have two resolutions for this evening. The first being Resolution 2021-A. Councilman Greenwood.
thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 2021-A. A resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a 3-year agreement between the city of Bellbrook and the International Association of Firefighters. Whereas the city met with the bargaining committee represented by the International Association of Firefighters to review the terms of the labor agreement covering wages, fringe benefits, and work rules for bargaining unit employees within the city of Bellbrook Fire Department. And whereas the parties agreed to terms for a 3-year contract starting December 1, 2020 and concluding November 30th, 2023. And whereas the city believes that this 3-year contract will allow for the continued provision of exceptional fire and emergency medical services to the residents and is in the best financial interests of the city. Now therefore that the city of Bellbrook hereby resolves. Section 1, that the city manager is hereby authorized to execute a 3-year attached hereinto between the city of Bellbrook and the International Association of Firefighters with effective dates of December 1, 2020 to November 30, 2023. Section 2, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced forthwith. To me, it looks like a fairly decent contract. You read section 19.2, that'll mess you up dealing with leap year. That's they got that figured out. The only comment that I have is the drug testing. I've noticed in a lot of the contracts that we've dealt with that there's a lot of language there. I just make a suggestion, maybe in the future, we just make random drug testing. I mean, I dealt with that for a lot of years. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's just a comment. Turn it over to you, Melissa.
Okay, so the copy that is in the packet is the clean copy. So I do have some bullet points just to kind of go through to describe some of the changes that were made. So there were 17 articles edited out of 29 total. And I think now we added an article. So I think now there are actually 30. So when I went through with some of the numbering to update these, the numbers there towards the end started to change. So hopefully it's not too confusing, but a couple of the notable changes were out of the 17 articles, there were 5 that were financial in nature and the other 12 were administrative in nature. So some of the administrative articles were removing the captain's position from the bargaining unit, which was proposed by the bargaining unit, probationary period, grievance procedure, injury leave, substance testing, holidays, vacation, which the only change to that, which is why it was not financial in nature, is they can now take it in 15-minute increments instead of, believe it was 1 hour. Health, they just struck, there was a lot of striking of the 40-hour position language from the contract. Duration was just some date changes, and then in Article 30, some date changes. So The bulk of the administrative articles it was kind of a trickle down effect when they removed the captain / 40-hour-a-week position. It had an effect on a number of different articles, so those were updated. So the financial articles, which I think are the most important ones to focus on, is Article 12, leaves of absence. They were afforded 2 weeks of parental leave for the birth or adoption of a child for any employee. And that is awarded upon request. Once we are notified that they would be in need of that leave, we would award that. So it's not something that's automatically credited to everybody every year or anything. It's on an as needed basis. The wage article, so they received the same as our police officers and sergeants, which was 2% in the first year and 2.5% in years 2 and 3. There is a training incentive. We had a training policy, and now it's part of the contract where they would receive an incentive of $30 per training attended versus the old method, which was quarterly and percentages of trainings that they would be required to attend. So this is per training. Then there was the affording of compensatory time, which was not ever part of their contract in the past and is afforded to all other employees within the city bargaining unit and non-bargaining unit. And the other big one was something else that just brought them in line with the rest of the employees, which is we struck the sick leave usage incentive. So if you did not call off sick, you were awarded personal time. So given the current pandemic and the fact that we did not want to encourage people not to call in sick if they were sick because of that incentive, we are just offering the personal days without having to earn them by not calling off. So those were the main changes that were made to this contract. So again, 5 in financial in nature and 12 administrative in nature. So 17 out of 29 articles were edited. And this was already approved by the IAFF, and actually the copy that's in the packet is signed by them. So they had already executed it.
Any questions of council regarding resolution 2021-A?
I do agree with Forrest's suggestion of implementing random drug tests in the future.
Okay. I think that'd be a good idea. Let's make a note for that, and we'll just track that going forward for our next one and just kind of start off with that's one of our quote, employer demands. How was this negotiation time-wise?
Pardon me?
How was it time-wise? Was it pretty extensive, a lot of meetings, or was it something went very straightforward? Or
I would say it was not straightforward. It was, there were individuals that were negotiating for the first time. So on the part of the management side, it went pretty smooth, but with a few inexperienced negotiators on the other side, it required a little bit more time. So there were quite a few meetings that were involved, and it did take longer than what I'd anticipated, but we were able to get it completed, thank goodness.
yeah, timing wise, it seems pretty close since the effective date is December 1, so we're not too far out.
No.
Yeah. Good.
And Mayor, may I ask, please, I had a question regarding the, what I heard us all talking about was just instituting random drug testing for all employees of the city. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it certainly can be, to be honest with you. Certainly, most of our employees are covered by bargaining contracts. So if we have police and fire, that would be the bulk of our employees, and it would just be the administrative folks.
It made sense. I didn't know if we needed to check with the attorney. I mean, I'm more familiar with federal rules. I'm certain you can. do this as an employer. I just didn't know if we were going to make it blanket, if the language changed, or you just started including that in all those. So just that quick question.
Yeah, good comment. I think we probably should make a note to include in our bargaining contracts to the extent we can, and then maybe see if there's any problems with the city attorney if we would implement it for all city employees.
Would there be anything that could preclude us from just instituting that citywide right now? I mean, do these contracts prevent that?
Short answer is yes. But not something that I am 100% positive of. I would have to read with that in mind to be able to make a more definitive answer. I know that all of our DOT employees are, it's part of state requirements. Anybody that's got a CDL is random. So our service department, they get random tests throughout the year. But for the rest of the employees, it has not been a past practice. So I would have to look at the contracts to see if that's something that we could implement outside of the contract, but I don't believe we could, but I can check.
Okay. Probably worth following up if there's a way to implement it for at least some of the employees at this point in time. We can certainly decide if we want to do it, if in fact we're able to do so.
Mm-hmm. Making a note now.
Any more discussion on resolution 2021-A? That being the case, we have a motion for the adoption of resolution 2021-A.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2021-A.
Thank you, Forrest. A second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Elaine.
A motion was made by Mr. Greenwood to adopt resolution 2021-A, authorizing the city manager to execute a 3-year agreement between the city of Bellbrook and the International Association of Firefighters. This was seconded by Mrs. Middlestetter. Mr. Greenwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor Schwaller.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Next up is resolution 2021-B. Deputy Mayor Edwards, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 2021-B, a resolution authorizing the city manager / finance director to file with the Greene County Auditor a request for advance of taxes collected. Whereas the Greene County Treasurer is in the process of collecting property taxes for 2021, and whereas tax settlements will return to the city those taxes collected for the police, fire, general, and police pension funds, and whereas these settlements will not be ready in final form until after a significant amount of the taxes are collected, and whereas such advances of taxes provided the city with a percentage of the taxes already collected, which can then be expended by the city. Now therefore, the city of Bellbrook hereby resolves, section 1, that the city manager / finance director is hereby authorized to request advance of taxes in the amounts authorized by the Greene County Auditor at those times during 2021 when sufficient taxes have been collected. Section 2, this resolution shall take effect and be enforced forthwith. This is just a standard resolution that we do every year so we can make sure that we get our tax dollars in a timely manner and don't have to wait until the county's actually collected on them. That's the way I understand it.
It also reminds us that in February, we'll have our first cut at the tax bills.
I was thinking that as I was reading it.
Any discussion on resolution 2021-B? We have a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2021-B.
Thank you, Nick. In a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ernie.
A motion was made by Mr. Edwards to adopt resolution 2021-B, authorizing the city manager / Director/Finance Director to file with the Greene County Auditor a request for advances of taxes collected. This was seconded by Mr. Havens. Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
yes,
Mrs. Middlestetter,
yes,
Mayor Schweller.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Next up is the city manager report.
Okay, we have hired a new maintenance worker that started with the service department on January 4th. We hired Josh Burns, and he came to us from Greene County with a wealth of mechanical and operating experience. And his first week, which was last week, he hit the ground running, and Ryan was very impressed with him, and he was a really big help to the staff on some of the different jobs that they were responding to, and that was a really good pickup. So we're really happy to be back up to full staff with our service department, and welcome to Josh Burns for joining us. Coronavirus relief funds. So I'm sure that everybody kind of heard that Sunday night, December 27th, the bill was signed in order to put into place a number of provisions related to the Coronavirus Relief Act. And part of that was that we got a whole extra year to spend the money that we had 2 days to spend. So it was one of those things that, I mean, it was kind of a sigh of relief, because there were 2 orders that we were not sure that we were going to get by the 31st. And so you weren't allowed to prepay anything. You had to have everything in hand by the 31st. So it was a slight sigh of relief, because we didn't have to worry about that timeline, but we had already spent all but $2,200 at that point. So it was pretty funny, right down to the wire with that one. So we've got like $2,200 left. And one of the things that we wanted to buy with the money initially that we weren't going to get in time, it wasn't going to come in until the spring, was a police bike, so that they are able to patrol out in open air and not be in the cruiser. And so we will be able to do that now that we don't have to have that hard deadline with the timeline now. So that was a real mad dash. And then we got a whole extra year at the very last minute. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So one of the things that I did last week was I got the idea that some of our community organizations could probably collaborate a little bit better with one another to figure out what's going on with each of the organizations and how we as a community can kind of support one another. So I reached out to a variety of the organizations in the community, such as Library Lions Club, Community Support Center, the Sugar Maple Festival, Ministerial Association, For Bellbrook by Bellbrook, Bellbrook by Design. I reached out to a number of them, and I know that I'm probably missing a couple. So I am open to any suggestions of anybody that I may have missed. But I just think that it would be nice if we were able to get together maybe monthly and just kind of talk about what each organization has going on, just so that we're all kind of aware and not duplicating efforts. So I'm hoping to get that started, hopefully by the end of the month, if not maybe by February at some point, just a conversation starter between the groups, so that we're kind of all informed as to what everybody's got going on. Farmers Market, Bellbrook by Design has offered to take over the Farmers Market this year. So that charge was being led by Pam Cook. So I told her I would assist her as needed, but I have officially handed everything over to her. So I'm hoping that another organization will be able to really take it and run with it and grow it. So I'm really excited about that. So staff has been really busy with the end of year stuff, getting all of our books closed and reconciled, which is all done at this point, which is really good. And we'll be providing all of the information for our financial statements and our audit. So that'll all be starting up. So it's a super busy time right now with the end of the year stuff. And then the last thing, which was not in my written report, but something that's worth noting, we found out on the 8th that the cable channel transmission is down. So we are not able to broadcast across the cable channel right now. So Greg Narker, Lieutenant Greg Narker of the fire department, is kind of our de facto cable access technology guru, and he's working to identify a solution and what that might cost in order for us to get back up and running. So we're going to be out for a while, I think is safe to say, but thankfully we've got the meeting streaming live to YouTube, which is great, and people are still going to be able to watch live if they so choose. So I did update, I put it on the front page of the website, as well as the council page and the Bellbrook TV page, so that there is that information if somebody goes looking, wondering if it's just their cable or if there's a real issue. So I tried to push the information out there all over our website. So I'll keep you guys posted as to what that fix may be and what the timeline looks like once I know more, but we just don't know right now. So that's it.
Thank you, Melissa. Is there anybody questions of the city manager?
Melissa, would that be like a Zoom meeting? And who would run it? You're talking about getting all the,
collaboration?
Yes, I would plan to do that through Zoom until some of the restrictions lift, just because I think that most people will be comfortable. I've gotten a very favorable reception to everybody that I reached out to, thought it was a good idea. I just think that all of those organizations independently are very community minded, and it's just, I think that it's a good idea for us to understand what everybody else is doing so that efforts aren't duplicated and we can try to help one another.
oh, I think it's a great idea. The logistics of the meeting is just what I was curious about. I know when I have Miami Valley Regional Planning meetings, we have like 75, 80 people. It works pretty good. A lot of people, you get a lot of information and you can participate.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea. Thanks.
Any other questions of the city manager?
I do think that's a great idea, Melissa, to coordinate the groups and have them communicate. So thank you.
Anything else? Moving on in the old business. No new business. Let's move to committee reports. First up being service.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to follow up with the water violation. I'd been in contact with Ryan when this came about. The Ohio EPA has a website. All this stuff is open to the public. The list of violations came out. That's all open. Anybody can go to the website. There's a ton of information about all kinds of different issues the EPA watches. The violation itself was basically a timing issue. It's kind of like a lot of things. You have to put a date on things. People like me procrastinate. It's like doing your taxes by the 15th or whenever we're supposed to in the future. But that's about what it amounted to. And I reached out to Haley Zimmerman, who watches as one of her testing substances is DBP, which is disinfection byproducts. That's what they were testing for, which is when you use chlorine and it reacts with carbon, things like bacteria and stuff, it creates a disinfection byproduct. And that's what the test was. And I called her up and talked to her, and I asked her to send me just a summary of kind of what this entailed. I'll read you her email that she sent me. And it says, "Good morning. I'm following up on a phone conversation that we just had regarding the annual 2020 DBP monitoring violation that was received by the city of Bellbrook. This violation was sent due to a missed DBP monitoring period of July 1st to September 30th of 2020. Ryan Paisley contacted me when the apparent violation list was distributed to let me know that he had collected a sample on June 19th, 2020, which was outside of the required sampling time frame. Because of this, the public notice for the violation was still required and the violation stood. Ryan submitted the public notice and verification form to me on December 16th, 2020. He also sent results for the DBP sample collected on November 30th, 2020. This sample was collected to ensure that the water quality was still at the acceptable level for DBPs. Now, this is important. There is no public health concern involved with this violation. And that's the extent of it. And so when, like we discussed earlier, the people get the letters and they'll have concerns and questions. And Ryan has volunteered, as he should, to answer anybody's questions. But like I say, going back to that website, if there's any questions about any of this stuff, that's a good place to find information. Plus, we post all of our readings on our website periodically when they're done and come back from the labs. And so if it makes any difference, that list was fairly large with almost every water department that exists in the area. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Forrest, thanks for the report. Very informative. I appreciate that. Next up is safety with TJ being out. Either Forrest or Elaine, do you have anything to comment on?
I'll just make a comment. Thank the police and fire departments for what they deal with every day. I know our flag is half-mast in front of the building. 2 officers lost their lives at the Capitol this week. And that, everybody's probably seen or read about it, but that's the kind of stress that the officers have to deal with sometimes, needless deaths like that. So I thank our police officers and firefighters for the work that they do. That's all I have. Thanks.
Absolutely agree.
Thank you, Forrest. Well said. Elaine, anything else or?
Nothing on safety, no.
Okay. Finance and audit.
Nothing tonight on finance and audit. We'll have our year-end numbers at our next meeting, I understand.
Okay, thank you. Elaine, community affairs.
Nothing on community affairs.
Thank you. Pam, we're time for the clerk's update.
All right, just a couple of items. There are a couple of positions on boards. The rules of our board say that any positions need to be announced publicly at an open meeting, so that's what I'm doing now. There are 2 positions where the board members, their first terms are expiring, and so 2 on the planning board and 1 on the records commission. All of those people are eligible for to serve a second term for each of those items. So, but rules say we announce that, and so if there's anyone else in the public that is interested in applying, the application is on our website, and to get those sent in, the applications are open for a month. And then upcoming, we have next Monday, January 18th, we are doing our 2021 City Goals Planning Workshop. So that's the time for us to look ahead and kind of see, where different people, what they want the priorities to be moving forward. So it gives us a heads up instead of everything usually being a surprise. The January 25th meeting, which will be the following Monday, is the next general business meeting of council. There will be an executive session beginning at 6 for the city manager performance review, and then our regular meeting following, starting at 7. Upcoming other work sessions Probably not going to be until February. We're going to have a CIC follow-up and a meeting on capital improvements. So, and then legislative items coming soon from the planning board include the vacancy registration requirements and 1820B sign code. Article 14 is a ways off, but that is in the works. So that's what I have.
Thank you, Pam. Any questions of council? Appreciate the update. This brings us to open discussion. Ernie, would you like to start us off tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. Couple things that residents have brought up to me over the holidays. It seems that there's an extraordinary number of coyotes coming out of the Sugar Creek Reserve into the city, and is of a concern. I explained to him that the reserve was not city property, but he had expressed a need to keep the residents safe if packs of coyotes are roaming the streets. And I actually have seen packs of coyotes roaming my street. So I don't know if there's anything we can do to influence that, but maybe that's worth checking into. Another thing that I talked to Melissa about a little bit, had a resident complain about a wood burning stove that's detached, a wood burning furnace that's detached from their house. And it is essentially parked right up next to the fence beside another neighbor with maybe a 8-foot, maybe a 10-foot chimney, and the smoke's blowing directly into the next door neighbor's house. Doesn't appear that we have any ordinances on the books for that. I would think that that resident should have gotten a permit to erect a structure on his property. But that is something that over the years is becoming more and more popular. So maybe we need to have planning board consider what to do there before it gets out of hand. We've got at least one problem now, and I'd hate to see it snowball to more. And that's really all I have. Congratulations to Chief Bazzaro. Look forward to working with him, and looking forward to a great year here. Thank you.
Thanks, Ernie. Where's Greenwood?
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations, Chief Bazzaro. Tickled to death with that appointment. And the CIC, I read that Xenia has a CIC. There's probably some information we could read. I read a little piece in the paper. They're trying to develop a part of downtown Xenia. And I might try to find out some more information, kind of what they're doing. Moving forward, be looking forward to working on that project. That's all I have. Thanks.
In Forrest, if you do want to contact Xenia, go ahead and do it. I would ask that not everyone in council reach out to the same people. If you take the mission, then we can have one person dealing with them and not
Okay.
really giving them a lot of questions from a lot of different folks, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Councilwoman Middlestetter.
Congratulations, of course, to Anthony Bazzaro, our new chief. Well-deserved promotion. I will respond to Ernie. I know there's at least one other location in town that has open burning. It isn't in a stove, using it as a to burn brush. And I've seen it in a couple of other locations as well. This particular one causes a considerable amount of problem on days when the smoke blows across the fence. So it's one of those things that's tough to to regulate, but we do have rules on the books that you can't have open burning. So maybe something we have to look into a little further. That's all.
Thanks, Elaine. Dr. Dave.
Just two quick things tonight, Mayor. One, again, I appreciate Ryan with the sampling being done too early, just from coming forward right away, doing all he can to make it right. Just appreciate seeing that in our employees. The second thing I wanted to mention to you all, over the break, I went down and had a tour of the community center with Kelsey. And I figured they were doing a lot down there with very little. They're doing a whole lot down there. It was very impressive to see. I was pleased to have her point out where the CARES money that we had given, how that had been distributed, how she was working with both the township and ourselves. And she just asked me to pass on to you all, if there are others interested in seeing the operation, she would be happy to do a socially distanced, but group tour to maximize her time. Very few employees down there, a whole lot of volunteer labor. And from what I saw in that run up to Christmas, they made a lot of folks' holidays, I think, a little brighter than it otherwise would have been. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Dave. Councilman or Deputy Mayor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to congratulate the long-suffering Cleveland Brown fans of Bellbrook who have finally gotten into the playoffs. And it's hard for me to say this because I'm a Steeler fan my entire life, but it's well-deserved. I wish the Browns and their fans good luck throughout the playoffs. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Nick. I want to again congratulate Fire Chief Bazzaro. It's such a pleasure to be able to promote from within. And this is someone who's had his entire career with Bellbrook. And it's just nice that we're able to bring in that caliber person at such an early age and promote them all up the rank to chief. And then secondly, I want to thank Ryan and Paisley for being with us this evening. It was kind of a last minute thing. I thought it'd be worthwhile to have him on the Zoom just to make sure everybody knows who it is if they want to call him, and to make sure that we have no problems. Again, to reassure the citizens that the water supply is in fact as good as ever. So thanks a lot. Is there anyone in the public audience who would like to speak this evening? I'm seeing none. Does anyone have any more business to bring before this council this evening?
Mayor, I do have one clarification. Seems I may have made a confusing remark. The burning fire thing that I was explaining was actually, it's an outdoor furnace that burns 24/7 with a chimney that's like 8-10 feet up off the ground. Wasn't an open fire. Just to clarify.
So this is used as a heat source for the residents, presumably?
Yes.
Gotcha. Anything else to be brought for this council this evening? Seeing none, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Hi.
Good night, all.
Good night.
See you.